For decades, Dame Judi Dench was regarded as Britain's cultural crown jewel, a performer whose mere presence commanded silence in theaters. She carried Shakespeare as effortlessly as conversation, radiated authority without force, and never had to demand respect, as it seemed to follow her naturally. Yet, time often reveals truths that reputation alone cannot protect. In her later years, Dench quietly dismantled the illusion of invulnerability, not through anger or accusations, but through a calm honesty. Even at the height of her acclaim, she found herself in moments where her voice was sidelined, her experience underestimated, or her professionalism tested in ways that most would not expect from someone of her stature. Power doesn't always announce itself. A common myth about success is that power is loud, brash, and always visible. The reality, however, is far subtler. Power often appears in small, almost imperceptible gestures. Who gets listened to, whose discomfort is ignored, and whose ideas are credited without acknowledgement. Judi Dench has spoken openly about navigating these moments, particularly in industries where commercial interests sometimes overshadow artistic integrity. She never framed herself as a victim, but she acknowledged that even someone of her renown could be spoken over or directed into narratives that didn't align with her values. These challenges weren't loud confrontations. They were about quiet pressure, unspoken expectations, and the implicit demand that one's prestige should come with compliance. Choosing authority over approval. Throughout her career, Dench faced situations where decisions about her work and public image were made without her input. Instead of reacting with outrage, she chose clarity and conviction. She understood that true authority doesn't come from volume or spectacle, but from knowing when to speak up and when to step back. In moments where the marketing, framing, or presentation of her work didn't align with her identity as an artist, Dench made the decision to distance herself. Rather than compromise her values for external approval, she simply redirected her energy, trusting that her career's relevance didn't need to bend to meet fleeting trends or demands. The cost of silence on set collaboration in acting relies on trust, communication, and mutual acknowledgement. When these elements are missing, the work suffers. Dench has reflected on the difficulty of working in environments where artistic approaches clash, especially when one performer's process inadvertently isolates rather than deepens the work. While she understood that different actors rely on varying methods, some preferring immersion and solitude, others connection and exchange, there were moments when a lack of communication crossed from creative choice into isolation. Rather than escalate tension, Dench absorbed the lessons quietly, making careful, private choices about future collaborations. For her, respect wasn't about agreement. It was about presence, connection, and acknowledging each other's humanity. When admiration turns complicated. Working alongside extraordinary talent can be both inspiring and challenging. Dench has always maintained deep admiration for her peers, even when personal dynamics prove difficult. Publicly, she always praised the work of others, celebrating brilliance where it was due. Privately, however, she understood the importance of maintaining boundaries. She recognized that the act of acknowledging someone's brilliance doesn't necessarily mean enduring discomfort. This ability to separate public grace from private boundaries became one of Dench's defining strengths. It allowed her to continue enjoying the craft she loved without sacrificing her own sense of self-respect or joy. The discipline of restraint. One of Dench's greatest strengths was never her capacity for confrontation, but her discipline of restraint. She didn't raise her voice or demand apologies. Instead, she responded to disrespect with silence and withdrawal. This approach was often misunderstood as passivity, but it was far from it. Dench's silence was deliberate, intentional, and deeply principled. She believed that dignity didn't require explanation or repetition. To engage in a battle with those unwilling to listen would only dilute her authority. Walking away was not defeat. It was a conscious, empowered choice to preserve her integrity and sense of self-worth. Humor without regard. Dench understood the role of humor in the creative process, but she never believed it should come at the expense of preparation or intention. Early in the process of development, she valued discipline, structure, and careful thought, especially when it came to comedy. Humor, while spontaneous, should never undermine the integrity of the work. When she recognized that humor was being used to disregard the work, when it became secondary or disposable, she didn't engage in conflict. She simply disengaged. There was no resentment or lingering animosity, just a quiet understanding that collaboration meant aligning on a shared goal. In her view, collaboration was never about dominating the room. It was about honoring the collective effort. The pattern becomes clear. Over the years, a quiet pattern emerged in Dench's professional life. Different people, different contexts, but always the same conclusion. Once respect was compromised, the relationship ended. She didn't retaliate, blacklist, or seek vengeance. Instead, she calmly moved forward. Her career was long and rich enough that she never needed to cling to environments that diminished her sense of self. Each boundary she set reinforced the next, creating a professional life characterized not by bitterness or grudges, but by clarity and purpose. Her approach to these moments was calm, private, and entirely rooted in self-preservation. Grace is not submission. Grace is one of the most misunderstood qualities, especially in the world of performance. It is often mistaken for softness or submission, but in Dench's case, grace was a form of strength. She knew who she was, what she valued, and what she would not tolerate. Her grace came not from the desire to please or comply, but from a certainty about herself. She understood that politeness did not equate to permission, and civility didn't mean silence. When something crossed a line, she did not engage in spectacle, but simply removed herself from the situation. This distinction allowed her to maintain both her dignity and her peace. The quiet power of no saying no is an act of great power, especially when done without the need for explanation. Dench understood this instinctively, often declining projects not because they lacked prestige, but because they lacked alignment with her values. She withdrew from collaborations not out of ego, but because of principle. These decisions were rarely publicized, and she never dramatized them. Yet each no was an important choice, one that helped preserve her integrity and shape the trajectory of her career just as much as any award or accolade. Aging without apology. As she aged, Dench resisted narratives that framed experience as fragility. She did not allow herself to be reduced to nostalgia or sentimentality simply because of her years. Her authority came not from time alone, but from the decades of work that had defined her career. She remained sharp, curious, and deeply engaged, expecting to be treated with the same respect as her younger peers. When that expectation was challenged, she didn't argue. Instead, she adjusted access to herself, reinforcing that her autonomy was non-negotiable. Her quiet confidence unsettled those accustomed to controlling others, but it also preserved her independence. Respect as a non-negotiable for Dench. Professionalism wasn't optional. It was a fundamental belief. Talent didn't excuse disregard, and fame didn't justify dismissal. She never demanded special treatment, but insisted on the basic respect that all individuals deserve. These beliefs, while not radical, were often seen as acts of quiet resistance in industries driven by ego and urgency. She never tolerated disrespect. When it wasn't offered, she left, knowing that true respect can't be bargained for. It must be earned and consistently upheld. A career shaped by choice. Looking back on her career, Dench's journey wasn't just a collection of roles, but a series of conscious choices, decisions about where to stay, when to leave, and who to allow close were all deeply personal. These choices weren't always visible to the public eye, but they were crucial in allowing her to work into her 90s without bitterness, scandal, or regret. Longevity in her career wasn't an accident, it was intentional, shaped by the clarity of her values and the respect she demanded in both her professional and personal life.